Oh, it didn't record. Hold on. Hello, everybody. My name is Alexia, and I'm with my friend
Riley.
And today we are going to be talking about two books, The Narrative of Frederick Douglass and Maggie, A Girl of the Streets. We're talking about these two books together because they share similar themes and, yeah. So let's get started. The themes that we chose that we felt like these books both shared was there was a sense of dehumanization of Frederick Douglass, who was an African slave. And then we have Maggie, A Girl of the Streets. She is a beautiful girl, and that's all that has going for her, but her family has shunned her because she ran away with a man.
We'll also be discussing a theme of hope/hopelessness.
We will also, with the hope and hopelessness, we will be talking about the hierarchy of needs and how you can reach hope or hopelessness. And we will also talk about fate or free will, which one fits better with these books. And if you would like to check out these books, once again, the names of them is Maggie, A Girl of the Streets, and The Narrative of Frederick Douglass. You can go check that out at your local library.
Dehumanization.
So, the dehumanization. We're going to be talking about Frederick Douglass first. So, what makes one person dehumanize, treat another as a lower animal? Somebody who, I butchered that. What makes one person dehumanize another person? What are the effects of dehumanization? Well, in Frederick Douglass, there's a clear line of this is not dehumanization that is occurring. It's just a religion. It's part of the religion for Christians to be able to treat another human like this.
But in a different point of view, it can also be viewed as dehumanization because they treated them as a property. You know, they didn't even know their birthdays. They weren't really told that, and they were taken away from their parents as children, like when 9-year-old.
I mean, when I say, I'm not saying that I don't believe there's no dehumanization in it. I'm just saying for the people in this book, I feel like they don't know what they're doing. I feel like they grew up thinking this is part of their religion, and there are... What I really like about this book, it's actually based on a true story. It's about a slave.
You know, it's his biography about himself, you know?
So he goes in depth of what he's going through, and you know what his thoughts are on this subject.
You go through his journey of, being a slave and then going from that to being free, and it's really great to see how that happens.
Another part, the Institute of Slavery was a barbaric one. How did slaves owners justify treating slaves so poorly? Well, like I said again, I don't think they really knew, there's a line where, it is wrong, but I felt like it was part of their religion where, the Bible said this. So they really didn't know that they were treating these humans, because black people were not considered humans at this time, so poorly.
Yeah, I agree. There is parts in the Bible that say treating people like this is okay, but it's not. And they didn't really think that because it's just the way of their life that back then. They may have thought it was okay, but it, wasn't.
According to Douglass, it affects both slaves and master. How did it affect their lives? What was there a lasting impact from slavery we still feel today? So the first question is, according to Douglass, did it affect both slaves and masters? In the book, there's this one chapter where Douglass meets this woman who teaches him how to read and write. And he considers her beautiful and kind and not a slave owner. But once deeper in the chapter,
her husband told her she can't do that.
Yeah.
And she kind of turned to a darker way. And she started treating him very, very badly.
Trying to find, the way he describes her is she appeared when I first met her at the door, a woman of kindness, heart, and the finest feelings. She had never had a slave under her control previously to myself, and prior to her marriage, she has been dependent upon her own industry of living. And then sooner or later, it becomes I could not approach her as I was accustomed to approach other white ladies. No, the fatal poison of irresponsible power was already in her hands and soon commenced its infernal work. So it kind of describes that once you are a slave master, you have this quote unquote poison. And with this poison, you have a lack of responsibility because you're dependent on another human being. So it didn't only affect slaves. And I'm not saying each outcome was good. For slaves, there was a bad outcome and it affected them terribly. For masters, their sense of power, so how it affected the masters, the slaveholders, was they got more power. Was there a lasting impact from slavery we still feel today?
Well, yes.
Yes. I feel like even today, us being here in this school, so fortunate to learn about this, but once you go out, like in different towns, like it's thrown at white kids all the time. Like my ancestors were slaves and it's like thrown to us. So I feel like it still impacts us. We still have this Black Lives Matter thing going on.
Racism is still a very, very big problem in the United States and around the world. So it's still very, very, what's the word?
It's relevant.
Yeah, that's the word.
I don't think, and like, this is not a question, but like for me, I'm thinking racism is going to be an issue for Americans for a while. Because, I mean, a lot of people think America is this place where you can show your culture, but America was based on white people who didn't want change. They wanted to be themselves, and that was it. And if they had to deal with change in the Bible, they would say.
Well, here is almost leading into into the freedom theme, but it kind of goes into America was based upon being free, but when they had these slaves, they weren't free. So it kind of takes away the meaning of what America stands for.
The poor and while wealthy occupied the surrounding neighborhoods.
That's Maggie.
Oh, okay, so dehumanization for Maggie now, because we are done with Frederick Douglass. Yeah. So Maggie.
No. Just stop it. What is happening? What is that?
Okay, back to Maggie. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties. Okay, dehumanization. I feel like in the book of Maggie, A Girl of the Streets, you really don't see it as much as you see in Frederick Douglass. I mean, there is, I want to say it's dehumanization. I would just feel like the mother has a problem, a drinking problem, and she doesn't know what she's doing with her kids. The father is not a father. So, it's not dehumanization. I just feel like it's more of there's lack of parenting and there's lack of more of the hierarchy of needs rather than dehumanization when it comes to...
I do want to kind of talk about the discrimination against Irish people in America during that time, because they were also very much discriminated against at that time. I saw a picture that compared an Irishman to a dog. So that's kind of bringing it into a theme of they compare them to animals and kind of dehumanize them that way. So it's definitely not as huge as Frederick Douglass, but there's definitely some dehumanization towards them.
And because of this time period, when the Irish did come, the Irish were Catholic, and we're dealing with Christians. So, like, Christians were afraid of Catholics. Like, we came to America to start America as only Christian because we didn't want these strict rules. And I'm not saying, like, that there's any reason why they should be dehumanized, but I'm just saying this time period, people were afraid, just like they were afraid of black people because of skin color. So what really brings dehumanization to these both books are people are afraid. So acting on that fear, the only way to act on that fear is not facing it. It's more of literally hitting it out of the ballpark.
It's kind of reminds me of like when bullies are like bullying other kids. They're doing it. Sometimes they do it because they're facing problems of their own, and that kind of makes me think of that a little bit.
I just feel like dehumanization plus fear for the unknown, just it fits in entirely for not only America, but it could fit for China, it could fit for Russia. Hitler was afraid of poverty, so he blamed the Jews. So, and that with that fear became the Jewish being dehumanized. So it all ties into fear and the unknown. And I feel like what we fear is the unknown because of Pandora's box in Greek mythology. Now I'm just like, woo! So, enough with the dehumanization. Fate and free will. Are humans able to change their futures, or are there ends is their future already set?
I definitely don't think their future is set because they definitely had to learn on their own and they had to make it for themselves. You know, Maggie's choice of becoming a prostitute definitely maybe wasn't the best thing, but that's how she had to do something. You know, she was kicked out of her house. Pete left her for Nellie, so she didn't really have anybody to go with. Her mom was very disappointed. I'm not even going to call her a mom because moms are loving. She's a mother.
Yeah.
She kicked her out because she was dating someone, which is kind of ridiculous. You know, in her words, she called Maggie, oh, she went to the bad, and then, you know.
So, like, you say that your future's not set. So do you think Maggie could have changed her career job?
Maybe if she didn't put herself in such danger, she could have. You know, she walked at night, so.
My thing is, I believe you can make whatever you want in life. Like, I grew up in different neighborhoods, and a lot of people think if you grew up in the hood, you stay in the hood. I'm going to tell you that's a lot of BS, because right now I'm here in Ram High School, and I'm spreading the hood around here. No, I'm just kidding. But I feel like when people say, like, you're going to stay in the hood, it's because those people don't want to try. And again, it all goes to fear. And there are some people who already have their future set because they're incapable of learning from their mistakes, or there is a physical thing that is stopping them. And that is totally possible. But for people like me, you, and the rest of Ram High School, I feel like if you want to do something in your future, if you don't want to be a bad person, and you live with a person who is a bad person, that does not make you that bad person. Because you are your own individual, and you have your own rights, you have your own choices to make. And you have to learn from your own mistakes for you to really understand what your life is going to be. Now, in Frederick Douglass, he showed that. I feel like Maggie really didn't show it. Maggie thought, okay, I'm in the hood, I'm going to stay there, or I'm going to use my pretty looks. While Frederick was like, you know what, I'm sick and tired of this abuse. I'm sick and tired of dehumanization, and I want freedom. I want what's rightfully mine. So instead of just moping around and crying about it like Maggie did, where she was looking for a handout, Frederick made his own handout. He learned how to read and write. He learned how to work. He learned a lot. And now he's here well, he's not here, unfortunately, but he has a book, and it inspires people to say that you don't have to be what people tell you you have to be. Because like I said, I grew up in the hood, and people said, if you're going to grow up in the hood, you're going to stay in the hood. And again, I'm living proof that I'm not in the hood no more.
Frederick Douglass had his chance when he met his new mistress, and she taught him some basic reading and writing, and that made him determined to learn more. He used the kids on the street to learn, and he made that his goal to learn to read and write so he can leave and get out of there. He definitely has a lot more free will than Maggie did. Maggie thought that her life was set to be one way because she's poor and she couldn't earn money,
And when it comes to fate and free will, because like we said, we think of dehumanization of people are in fear. And when we were talking about something else, weren't we? Oh, hope and hopelessness a little bit. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about fate and free will, what ties into this is, are you going to just sit there and complain about your problems, or are you going to do something? So it's, you get up and you make a difference like Frederick did, or you're just going to wait. And I'm sorry, life is no waiting game. So what Frederick did was more, what's the word? He did it because he knew he had to. Maggie, she could have learned how to read and write. She did not have to become a prostitute. Even if she didn't learn how to read or write, she could have gone work at a convenience store. She could be a bartender or a waitress. But
she worked in a factory. So what happened to that? I don't think it ever said that, did it?
I don't know. So we couldn't find where Maggie, I think Maggie got fired or she did not want to work there anymore. No, I actually think she fell in love with Pete, and that's why.
Yeah, she might have stopped working though, because she thought Pete would give her the luxury of life.
So we got fate and free will done. Okay, so hierarchy of needs. So we have there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps before you can work towards. So there's your basic needs like air, food, water, sleep. On here it actually says sex, and I kind of want to talk about that because in 8th grade I actually learned that it kind of ties into love and belonging, I feel like more. But I feel like if you don't have a companion, you're not going to work up towards your goal. I feel like if you have somebody to support you, and I'm not saying sex is going to support anything. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying guys still have sex because that'll bring you to the top. Inside joke over here. Okay, but I feel like if you have a companion, I feel like you're going to work towards the top, and that's the third thing you need. The second thing you need is safety. So you need a house, you need a job, you need a family.
You need good health.
So, and then comes, again, the supporting
roles of
like friendship, family, and I'm not saying you need a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but I feel like
even maybe just a good friend.
Like like a close friend you could say anything to. So then you need esteem. So that is are you confident? You're achieving your goals, and are you respecting people, and are people respecting you? And then self-accusation comes, and that's when it's hard to explain. The best way I can explain it is you're doing right by the community, but you're not saying you're doing right by the community.
I feel like a lot of people can't really reach this place because there is still a lot of prejudice in the world. Because one of the reasons, or one of the things on there, and the example is lack of prejudice, but there's still a lot of prejudice in the world. You know, racism, you know, judging people by the color of their skin, religion, ethnicity, you know, that's the same as race. But, you know, okay.
I feel like another part of self-actualization, I feel like people they can't reach there because, I mean, some parts of the world, like America, we are fortunate enough to have a lot of people and homes, and we have food and water, and we have all of this. But the one thing that's stopping Americans from reaching the top is because we like to brag. We like to say, I'm the best. We're the best.
We're definitely a very egotistical country, which is not really a good thing. You know, we like to say we're the best, we have everything, you know, we have good education, we have food. Like, is that really something to brag about?
Tying in with these books, I feel like Maggie really, the only thing she really has for her is the basic needs, the food, the water, sleep, safety. I don't feel like she has that because her father was abusive and then her father died and then her mom is an alcoholic abusing her.
She doesn't even have a home to live in, so she really doesn't have that security of living.
But Frederick Douglass, I feel like he reaches, the whole book is about him reaching self-actualization. He first starts off with only having the basic needs. But then he starts making friends with other slaves, and he starts making friends with some masters of his. And then with that, he has this connection of family. And then he's, again, respected by a lot of people because now he's working towards the top. He's not just a slave. No, he's a person who's getting out of this. And his self-actualization is him helping other people. He tries to abolish slavery. And there's like a quote, he says that like people from the Underground Railroad, he respects them. But one thing he doesn't admire is that they're like, oh my God, I'm in the Underground Railroad. Like why?
They're too open about it.
Like you're, number one, you're not supposed to be open about the Underground Railroad. Number two, that doesn't make you a better person if you're saying that out. You're just bragging. And it just ruins the whole point of why you did this. So that is the hierarchy of needs.
Okay, moving on to hope and hopelessness. How does having hope or no hope affect us? I feel like having no hope really just kind of puts you down into like almost like a depression.
Yeah.
Because when you don't have hope, you don't really have anything else. That's like the one thing you need, I feel like.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go like, this is like a whole metaphor. So we all know what Batman symbolizes for, right? Justice. And then you have the whole other Justice League. It's gonna be the best way I can explain it. And then you have Superman. When you see that symbol, you know that means hope. And with that symbol of hope, that you see these people, that they actually want a difference. Like, if you didn't see these Superman movies, how do I explain it? Without Superman, there wasn't hope in that movie. But when Superman came in, everybody was happy. Everybody was working together. And he's the symbol of hope. So what does it mean for Frederick and Maggie? Frederick was the Superman for slaves. He learned how to read and write when people said it was impossible. He was the one that escaped and I think lived in New York or something. Yeah, he lived in Richmond, New York with a wife and had kids. That is hope right there. He is the hope for these people. And so how does hope affect us today? I feel like we don't have our Superman yet because we have a lot of people who we have a horrible president right now. Okay. So
okay, that's not about that.
But I feel like one day we're gonna get that. We're gonna have our Superman like slaves had theirs. For Maggie, her Superman was Pete. He was a thug.
But he also kind of turned away from Superman because he left her in the dark for another woman. who scammed him.
So he's like a Joker who wanted to go with Harley Quinn.
Kinda.
Okay, so
What role did alcohol play in the story of Maggie and the lives of the people of 5 Points? So that's involved in the hope and hopelessness thing. I definitely think alcohol was a big problem in her family, and I feel like I'm trying to explain, but alcohol is it's a disease. Alcoholism is a disease, and it's really hard for anyone to break. And I feel like her mother was just such a good manipulator. At the end of the story, when Maggie passes, and she cries, but I felt like it was a fake crying for attention. She craved it. So that, tying with hope and hopelessness, do you have anything to say about it?
well, with alcohol, I've been in a situation where I felt like alcohol played a role in my life. I'm going to actually go deep into this conversation. In a paragraph I actually wrote for the other artifacts we had to do, I said that me and Maggie are similar because I felt like the only thing I had going for me was my looks. And I also felt like my father was an alcoholic and he might now be paying the price. And his hope is he let go of alcohol. His thing is not to be around it. And his Superman is me and my sister Erilyn. And what he told the judge was, if I'm not there, I don't know what's going to happen. I might fall into that trap. My daughters are my heroes. So I feel like if Maggie had that mother who stepped up to the plate like my father did, there could have been hope for her. And she could have had her own choices made. But because her mother wasn't a mother, her mother didn't step up to the plate and her mother just kept drinking, she didn't have hope. She couldn't reach the top of the hierarchy of needs. And she was dehumanized because she was a prostitute and because she didn't make her own choices because she was afraid to. It led her for dead. So, thank you for staying tuned for our podcast. We enjoyed our time and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Goodbye.
Bye.